In this video, I'll be getting into how Final Fantasy XI's lack of regional servers and how Square Enix handled that made it one of the most unique MMO experiences that we may ever see. Let's get right into it. First, a little bit of background. Unlike today, all of the Final Fantasy XI servers were built, maintained, and existed in Japan, where the game was developed. Modern implementations like Final Fantasy XIV, World of Warcraft have servers locally in different regions to keep ping the amount of time it takes for a player's action to get to the server and then, respond back as low as possible. The effect that this has, however, is that players end up by definition being broken up by their region. Final Fantasy XI never did this, choosing instead to subtly alter in-game mechanics to kind of help account for the huge difference in ping between, say, the United States and Japan. But how did this ultimately affect the game and, therefore Vana'diel? Most obviously, as soon as you stepped into the game at any time of day, it truly felt like a world full of cultural and linguistic differences. Players from all over the globe were thrust together, sure, hopping on at different times of the day, but interacting nonetheless. You'd see glimpses of them throughout the day regardless, because you always get those night owls that are playing in the middle of the night. That was me. I learned much of what I know about day-to-day British culture from the players that I played with, friends that I knew in England that played Final Fantasy XI with me. Things that I would never have known, just dumb little stuff. I know it sounds stupid, but dumb little things. I'm like, that's interesting, what a unique perspective on life. And because we're always seeing this through the lens of a video game, this cultural diversity affected how players formed groups, how they'd engage in content, how they'd react to success and failure. It was fascinating, and you don't even realize it at first, but you're kind of just subtly aware. You're like, that was kind of weird, and then you see it more often. You're like, wait a second, are you guys all like that? But of course, the biggest gap here is in how players directly are able to communicate. Square Enix can't force a common language upon everybody. They can't just be like, you now speak this, you're playing our game. No, they fully acknowledge that we'd have different languages, different core player bases playing on the same servers. So they dove headfirst in their own custom solution, the in-game auto-translate system. Auto-translate was pervasive throughout everything in Final Fantasy XI. Most common actions or term as they relate to MMOs were translatable. In-game locations, abilities, spells, jobs, concepts like pulling. I think pulling was somewhere in there. It's allowed for, basic communication between players, regardless of their native language. Sure, mistakes would happen. Words sometimes wouldn't cross-translate in the same way that people expected. I think that a lot of times we'd use words for camp that maybe didn't culturally make sense in the way that they were translated. People would be like, why did you just say parking spot? And it's like, it doesn't make any sense. But at the same time, we figured it out. Everybody eventually got used to it. Some were also kind of amusing, at least, from my perspective. The Japanese player base's total frustration and disgust at every time that somebody would examine them. And it took me forever to figure out why. For the longest time, I thought it was just a difference in a gamer perspective. That's don't look at my gear. And maybe that's part of it. But also apparently the way that we see so-and-so examines you was translated to so-and-so looks you up and down. And it was kind of creepy, and the way that it was read was just no, that's a little invasive. For years, I was just why doesn't anyone want to let me examine you? You have the coolest gear. Let me see the gear. In general, though, the translations were very effective, and it's crazy to think that it's not a commonplace thing in all games. For years, I would play with players that spoke nothing but Japanese. Japanese text would be flying through party chat because I managed to communicate based concepts like, hey, let's go to this zone, party, need this job, forming skill chain, magic burst. Can I have it? I know it sounds obvious for anybody that played Final Fantasy XI, but that's such a unique concept, and it was so cool. But it eventually just kind of became a fundamental part of how I communicated in Final Fantasy XI, even with English-speaking players that I could just type in English to. You have these subtle little inside jokes and inflections on terms that you use in certain ways, and everyone knows what you mean because that's how it evolved. Do you guys remember when Helldive was introduced, when Blue Mage came out as an auto-translate thing? Birds can have a move called Helldive, and Blue Mages learn Helldive. And then it was auto-translatable, but you used to be able to just type Hell tab and it's hello. Now, Hell tab is Helldive, because it's before that in the alphabet. And all of a sudden you have to type out the full hello. So for a while I decided Helldive. And I'm sure a lot of players were like, why is he saying Helldive? But yeah, I just kind of use it as a way to enhance what I'm typing and draw more, make it more interesting than just bare bones text. If I type a totally normal text sentence in Final Fantasy XI, it feels kind of boring to me. I'm like, there's nothing I could auto-translate that and just add those little brackets. There are certain words that I can't get past the first 3 or 4 letters without hitting tab and just kind of hoping it auto-translates for me. So how does this compare to modern MMOs today? I mean, auto-translate is still a very viable function in Final Fantasy XIV. They brought it over as a concept, and they did a great job with it. But it's not quite the same, because with regional and language-specific servers in abundance, yes, auto-translate is there, but why would I need it? It's quite rare to encounter somebody from another country unless they're specifically playing with friends, in which case they probably speak the same language anyway because they're playing with friends that are on the server that's focused primarily on a certain language. It's just another aspect of 11 from an era where games were just done differently. Like, you would never see this anymore because ping is so important to online games and the experience that you have that nobody would even dare say, like, you've got to play on our servers. Have you seen most, when like a Korean MMO comes out and it hasn't been released in the West, and somebody's like, hey, if you do these actions, you can play this MMO, you can get in. The first thing you ever hear about is like, but the ping is almost unbearable. It's very difficult and you've got to like work around it and try to get ways to get your ping down as low as possible. But games back then were just, we always talk about how slow 11 is. I mean, it was originally on dial-up, so it just lives and works in a different way than most modern games do, and the distance wasn't quite as big of a factor, I guess. Games from this era were just done differently, even at a technical level. We always talk about the functional way that games were different back in the early 2000s and even previously, but technically, there was just so much that they could and couldn't do back then that we do now. And because of those technical changes, I don't know if we'll see anything like that, at least for a long time, before, you know, distance no longer matters to digital transmissions, I guess. I don't know. Might be cool. I hope someday. But what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments if this multicultural server sensation was a positive for the game, caused more headaches than good experiences, or something you didn't even really notice. Question of the week. What is the best or worst story you have of chatting with somebody that didn't speak your native language at all in Final Fantasy XI? How did it go great or absolutely terrible? Keep on the lookout for more Final Fantasy XI videos coming up in the future, and also WoW Classic videos coming up because it's coming out next week. Can't wait to see you guys there, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Peace.
Thanks for watching. If you're interested in more videos like this, think about subscribing. And if you already have, don't forget to click that little bell next to the sub button to get notified when new videos go live. Hit me up in the comments with your thoughts on this video, or come hang out and chat with me on Twitch every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And definitely look me up on Twitter or Instagram and Hunt for Games to keep up with what else I've got going on. See ya.